They're not ready for this.
We're ready for what?
I guess you'll just have to find out. Welcome to Conversations in Commerce, where we have candid conversations about technology, e-commerce, print, the supply chain, and we try to have a little fun in the process. I'm your host, Andrew Alford, and with me, as always, is Alyssa. Hey, Alyssa, how's it going today?
Hi, good. One question.
Yeah.
You can't leave me hanging. What are we not ready for?
The truth about cybersecurity.
Well, I already have like malware, like anti-malware protection.
That's great, but I mean, what else do you have there?
What do you mean?
See, I knew you weren't ready for this. I knew it. All right. So why don't we, so we can satisfy Alyssa's thirst for knowledge, why don't we go ahead and introduce today's guest, what you've got with us. This two-time Family Feud guest star brings a wealth of information to today's show. Having spent the last 3 years at Liftoff and the last 13 years just in the industry, he led Liftoff's PCI Level 1 version 4 compliance cutover flawlessly. He has a bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of West Georgia. And on top of that, he's an amazing dad and husband and so many other things. Heck, welcome to the show. Caleb Duncan, everybody, welcome.
Oh, hi there.
Oh, geez.
Always wanted to do that, sorry.
I know, I bet you did. So Caleb, man, I've had the chance of working with you over the last, 3 years or so. And man, can I tell you something? I'm glad you're on Team Liftoff. That's all I was going to say.
Oh, wow.
I thought you were going
Andrew.
to scare you.
I'm happy to be here. Quite the introduction there. You know, when we were working on this, I wasn't quite sure if I was supposed to say one time or two time. I technically was at the show twice. We did win our first game. So one time or two time? Which one?
Yeah, 2 times, man.
Okay,
2
2 times.
Yeah, let's just go with 2 times.
Okay.
So tell me, man, what's he like? What's Steve Harvey like? He's cool?
Yeah. Steve Harvey's great. Definitely the best host by far with Family Feud. It was a wonderful experience. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of the contestants that go on the show are actually in the audience. We were there for like 2 days before we were actually selected.
Oh man.
And I still get text messages every time it comes on TV on a rerun or something like that. We actually went under my wife's name, maiden name, the Bishops, Team Bishop, and it was quite the experience, but we were there for a long time. Steve Harvey was great to meet. Wonderful guy.
No, I'll stop you on that Bishop thing right there because I know somebody who's been on Family Feud too. And his last name just so happened to be Bishop. Did he happen to be a Spanish teacher at the middle school?
Actually, it's funny. You didn't know that. That's actually Laura's brother.
That's
way.
crazy.
Yes,
Small world.
Yes. So he's actually a middle school teacher at Lee Middle School. He's actually my best friend. Love him to death as well. So yes, that's the same Bishop.
Proof
Okay.
that it is a small world and you don't burn bridges ever, right?
That's right.
Oh my goodness. So Caleb, it's safe to say that most of the Liftoff community has had a chance to work with you, but I imagine that there's some members of our audience, our listeners and our viewers that don't know who Caleb Duncan is. And so why don't you enlighten us? Why don't you share a little bit about your backstory, the AKA the superhero origin story. We'd love to hear where you've been and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. And it's funny you said the superhero because one of my favorite animes is One Punch Man. So I actually like to say that I'm just a man who's a developer for fun. So I actually really enjoy, been in the industry for, like you said earlier, 13 years, University of West Georgia, graduated computer science degree. That's just when my story began. Came out directly going into IT as a developer. Worked in a textile manufacturing company, which is why I still consider that in our industry, right? But worked there in IT directly out of college. Stayed there for almost 10 years. Mountville Mills down in LaGrange, Georgia. Loved the company. Loved the CEO. Loved our IT director as well. Left on very good terms there. And I think we actually have a good story about how I actually came to work with you.
Well, before we get to that, something funny that our audience doesn't know about Caleb, and it's every time I go to a restaurant or anywhere with this guy, he has to kick over the welcome mat at the very front of the door. Why don't you explain what that's all about, Caleb?
Yeah, I can tell you that. Once you work for a manufacturing company long enough, you really, it opens your eyes to the industry as a whole, like how products are actually manufactured. And Mountville Mills down in LaGrange manufactures about 95% of the floor mats.
Yes, it's incredible, and that's a lot of mats.
Yeah, and so once you realize that, you end up catching the fever, as we called it back in the day, which is basically you go into an establishment, you see a floor mat, and you kick over the corner of it, because on the corner of it you can actually identify where the mat was manufactured, which plant it was manufactured in. I found myself down in the Dominican Republic on a cruise with my wife, and I had the fever still, even out of country, and turned over the floor mat, and sure enough, there was a QR code there. And that's kind of segues into my passion for developing, because the QR code, I actually coded the lines of code directly responsible for creating and producing that QR code. So it was just so awesome to be able to see this QR code here that I could scan with my phone and see all this information. And so taking something intangible, but finding it in a tangible format was just amazing.
Yeah, I love that story. And I have to make sure that anytime I meet somebody, I tell them specifically what you do every time you see a mat. But I know that there's another funny story that we want to talk about here. It's on the topic of working at Liftoff. I'll tell you what, I'm going to cue it up for you. You tell the story, because I think you tell it better than anyone.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that I worked at Mountville Mills. I was there for almost 10 years. And Andrew, in fact, we would get together. We knew each other. We knew each other for 3 years.
Yeah.
But what I'm not telling you is that Andrew is actually my neighbor. You might wonder, people like, how am I here? How am I have this camera? Because he didn't fly me out. I actually just walked right next door.
It's a long commute to get here.
And so the funny story is that Andrew and I would talk shop. We'd meet under the pine tree. Is that too Georgia?
Yeah, up under the pine tree out there. That's where we're meeting right now.
Yeah, so we would talk shop, talk about tech conferences that I was attending. You tell me about things going on in the air industry and what was going on in Liftoff. And one day you just decided to say, you should come work for me.
Yeah, absolutely, you should.
And I don't mean anything by it, but I actually laughed in your face.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, and it was just a reflex, because as I just said, we had lived next door for 3 years by that point. And so the thought of having your boss directly beside you, it was just a muscle reflex. So I do apologize for that, Andrew. I feel bad to this day, but I am glad that I took it home. You definitely prayed about it as a Christian, talked to my wife about it, and just gave it serious thought, came back to you and just said, make me an offer.
And the rest is history, man. It's been great ever since. And so I want to cut to the chase. One of the reasons that we've got you here today is the topic for today is cyber secure your business. There's a graphic there. Look at that. Look how nice that looks. Fred does good work.
Love Fred.
So Fred. When it comes to the world of cybersecurity, I mean, there's so many things to talk about. And Caleb, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And I think about everyone's role in the equation, right? I think most people have this mentality that it's an IT only thing to worry about. But what's your take on that?
That is 100% false. Cybersecurity, I think that if you touch technology in any way, shape, or form, which most of us do, you need to have at least a basic understanding of cybersecurity. It's not just the IT folks. It's not just the people higher up in the organization, but every single employee, not just employees. We're talking about your privacy, your data as a whole could be subjected to some type of data breach. There's actually a website. I think you've actually mentioned this one before. I don't think it's on your show, but it's haveibeenpwned.com that you can go to, and you can actually type in your email address. And on this website, it will tell you if your data was compromised in some type of data breach. And that data can be collected by bad actors or sold off to the highest bidder to, if all of us have opened up our email boxes before and be like, where's all this spam coming from? All I get is spam all the time. Well, there's a chance that it was, in some type of data breach or something that's out there. But it can be a lot even more nefarious than that, they can use that information to do what's called a phishing attack. That's PH. Phishing attack. And so essentially they can use this information, this data, to orchestrate an email that is catered directly to you. And they can still try to get you on a monetary standpoint. So it's not just like, oh, I don't need to be concerned about this because I'm not in IT. I don't care about cybersecurity. No, you do need to care. And your data, if you don't care, I like to always say that the moment that you think you're not susceptible to something is the moment you become susceptible to it. And so I would encourage everybody to, go to websites, listen to it, haveibeenpwned.com. There's an article that I was reading earlier. My wife always makes fun of me for this because I am very passionate in our industry and technology. And so one night we were watching TV, and I'll just be reading tech articles. And she's like, "Are you serious? You're sitting here, you're reading tech articles? Like, you just got off work. Why are you reading tech articles now?" But the truth is that I truly am passionate about it. I love this industry. I love working, in coding. And I actually read an article the other day that was talking about cybersecurity, and it was telling people how to find ways if your information had been stolen, and also ways that you could secure it. Inside its article, I'll give it to you, Andrew, and make sure you can link it maybe in this video.
Yeah.
But essentially, it linked to a blog post, and it would actually show like 5 or 6 ways that you could secure your data as an end user. And I loved the article because a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't protect my information. I can't protect my data." Well, hello, if you lock your front door, you're protecting your assets.
That's low-hanging fruit, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, your personal information is data that you should be protecting. And so I love what this author did is that she actually broke it down into how long it would take you. And like the first one was like 5 to 7 minutes. I'm super busy. I know you're super busy, Andrew. Everybody probably listening is busy. I get it. But 5 to 7 minutes?
Yeah, you got to do it.
That's something that we could all, spare time for. So
anything else is irresponsible. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think that I want to really tear down that ideology that data security, cybersecurity is something that only IT needs to care about, because that's not true. It's 100% false, and we all need to care about it in some way, shape, or form.
So when you mentioned the website a few times, it's the Have I Been Pwned, and I think we've got it right across the top here for everybody to see. Encourage you to check this out. So last year at the Brand Chain event, got up on stage, and I mentioned that very link, and there was a collective, like I could feel literally like all the air getting sucked out of the room. It was something else, because the reality was 100% of everyone in that room had something going on, whether it was an email or even a password, or even some of them were financial information. You saw people like getting on their phones immediately, getting on with their IT guy. I mean, it was something. And so that goes back around to what we're saying. We're all targets, like every last one of them. So Caleb, that email that I get from that Arabian prince offering me a few $1 billion, I should just open that, right?
Yeah, please don't. Please don't. No one open those. But, we laugh about those. But the truth is that these type of attacks are getting a lot more sophisticated nowadays. It's not super obvious with grammatical errors all over the place, and something from the Arabian prince asking you to give $10,000. It's more sophisticated than that. It's a lot more targeted, and in fact, Andrew, I don't even know how to say this properly, but you're actually a liability for us as an organization.
Oh, thanks.
But let me be more specific. I mentioned this phishing attacks, right? So these are phishing emails that are orchestrated directly at it. But whaling attacks are actually catered more to higher ranking individuals.
Just call me Moby.
So of course, as most listeners would understand, the president of an organization, Andrew, he can have as much access as he'd like because he signs my paycheck. So of course, if he calls me on the phone and says I need access, then I'm going to probably grant it. Well, bad actors understand this paradigm, and so they'll use that to orchestrate an email that is catered directly towards a high value target to get that broader access. And it all kind of connects together, right? So we talked about how is this data, how does my information, how does my data matter? Well, if I were a bad actor and I was targeting possibly a CFO of a company, I would actually go on to LinkedIn and looked at it. I mean, I have a LinkedIn profile. We're connected, Andrew, me and you, through LinkedIn, through our organization. So now a bad actor can go in there. That's public information. So now I could go in there and say, okay, I know if I'm targeting, let's say John, the CFO, and I know that Bob and Sally both report to John, then I might orchestrate an email catered directly from Bob, acting like, hey, I had a vendor, I need to change out something on the back end, and I need you to use this new banking routing information in order to make sure this vendor gets paid. But it sounds a lot like it's coming from Bob, because Bob's information was stolen off of social media, or maybe it was publicly facing. And so they use this email to orchestrate a highly sophisticated whaling email directed at that individual, that CFO. And it's a lot more believable. It's a lot more trustworthy, right? Because, Bob works for me. I believe this was Bob. And so a lot of people have fall victim to that.
Yeah. Speaking of that trust, I did get your message about your ACH this morning. Got that taken care of for you right away.
Oh God, please don't joke like that, Andrew. You got me sweating over here. Okay, don't do it.
Well, it's what you said though. It's that trust level, right? So let's say that I see an email that comes from you. You just said it. I know you, and that email very well may mention some things about that person's private life, like you said, like vacation, some of those things that they know, right?
Yeah. And so it could be, it could be information stolen from multiple different places, right? I mentioned LinkedIn. Maybe your information was stolen on some other website, and they might collect all this information. So maybe not just LinkedIn, but let's go back to the example I mentioned earlier with Bob. Maybe they looked on Facebook and Bob's profile is 100% public. And so this bad actor, maybe it wasn't even a data breach. Maybe they just looked and saw, oh, Bob posted that he was on vacation last week. So what am I going to do as a bad actor? I'm going to go and I'm going to target John, the CFO, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm so sorry, John. I just got back from vacation last week. The Bahamas was awesome. I really had a great time. However, I'm catching up on my email here, and I see that vendor didn't get our latest ACH transaction, and I need you to update their banking information. And guess where that money actually ends up going? It doesn't go to the vendor. It actually goes to my personal information, my personal bank account. And sometimes this actually can take a couple months to actually discover. And occasionally, and I said occasionally, but more often than not, actually, it ends up being a large sum of monetary value.
I've heard more than a few stories. Matter of fact, some close friends of ours, several years ago, they had, I don't know if you call it an ACH attack. That's probably not the proper terminology for it, but I mean, it was in excess of 40 grand. And then even worse, more recently, as this past year, there was one for at least a monetary figure of 6 figures. And that's just staggering. I mean, that, company, they don't have that in their budget. Right. I mean, that 40 grand, they can't just keep spending over and over again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is something that, I actually have a really good friend of mine, goes to our church, works for the Newton Police Department. And I've talked to him a little bit about this, but, they have the police department, the FBI, GBI, everybody, they have entire teams dedicated to, fraud on the cybersecurity aspect of it. I mean, and we're talking billions of dollars that are taken yearly, annually, and so it's definitely something we need to take very seriously. And if you did get that email this morning, Andrew, please let me know so we can stop this podcast so I can go fix that real quick.
I was just messing with you.
Okay, good. I just had to clarify there. You got me a little worried. All right, but the point to be, the point would be that anybody that gets that email, hey, pick up the phone and call. Hey, call Bob, say, hey, did this actually come from you? If it seems odd, if it seems a little off, and especially if it's trying to get you to act very quickly, just pause for a second and say, does this make sense? Trust your gut there. Pick up the phone, call. We have a similar policy or organization where, depending on the severity of, sometimes people lose their phone, they can't get in with MFA or anything like that. Those protocols are there to help protect the end user, our employees. And so we actually have a policy where I have to actually verbally communicate with that person to ensure that this is the other person that is actually making the request. They truly are that person and not some bad actor that's out there.
So we've talked a lot about what to look out for. I think, the next thing I'd like to talk and ask you, Caleb, is what is the first step in securing the fort? Let's say that you're starting from ground zero, you're starting from scratch. What's the first step in building a good cyber secure aware environment?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. I would say that the most important thing is training. You know, I'm going to use a term that I feel like gets a bad connotation a lot of times, but ignorance is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I'm ignorant on a lot of different things, and that's okay. And how you fix that ignorance is with knowledge, right? So you obtain that knowledge and specifically talking about training, train your employees, right? Managers, listen to me. Train your employees. This is the first line of defense that you can do. You know, just make them aware, because the truth is that the vast majority of employees, they don't want to be that guy that led in the bad actor that made their entire organization crypto locked, ransomware attack. They don't want to be that person. And so how you help them is you empower that employee. You don't sit there and tell them that they're horrible. You tell them, hey, this is what's up. This is what can happen. And this is what we're doing as an organization to help prevent that. And so training, I would say, to answer your question, Andrew, something like Know Before.
Yeah. I was going to ask, what does that look like? Is that a platform?
Oh, yeah. So Know Before is actually a platform that we utilize in our organization. It's a training platform specifically targeted around phishing. So what it does is it trains our employees to look for red flags inside of emails that they might receive. Because the truth is that a lot of times all the IT folk and all the people that are out here, they'll put up some really tight security measures in place from an organization. But if you have employees that have this elevated access, it sometimes can be easier to just convince that employee to give them the credentials. So if I don't have the key to your front door, Andrew, maybe it'd be easier for me to break down the front door, somehow convince you to give me the key, Now, I don't know if you'd give me your key or not. Maybe you would. But, but the point is that it's a lot of times phishing attacks are trying to get people to click on information and to steal that data, those credentials from the user that will then therefore give them broader access into the infrastructure. So Know Before allows you to not only teach your employees about phishing attacks, but also talks to them about a broad range. I love Know Before. I'd advocate for them. We are not sponsored by Know Before on this video, but I would advocate for them for free all day long. I love them because they take a very, very beautiful approach at how to train employees. It's never about trying to punish the employee. It's really about empowering the employee. Make them part of the solution. Don't make them, they don't want to be the victim. They don't. And how you prevent that is you actually train them. So phishing attacks, but also how to work remotely. Password managers. That's a great, another area, use password managers, don't send plain text passwords. Don't be the person that sits there and writes their password on a sticky note and puts it on their monitor. It's very easy to compromise that individual at that point. And so that's what I'd say. Know Before, advocate for it 100%. That's a great training platform. If you've never heard about it before, shoot me an email, shoot Andrew an email. I'm sure we'll be happy to get you connected to them.
So I have a question. Sorry, go ahead, Alyssa.
Sorry, as somebody who has been through the training on Know Before, I like how interesting it is. Honestly,
Yes.
They make it fun. They give you games, they give you
100%.
videos. The last session that we had was they gave us an entire action movie on a physical breach attack. That was pretty
The Inside Man.
fun to watch. Yeah, they made it.
Oh yeah, it was an action thriller.
Yeah, they make it interesting.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah. And that's an amazing point. I'm so glad you brought that up, Alyssa, because we make it fun. We really do. And I don't know if you even know this, but we actually hand select those videos.
Really?
So Sean on my team, Sean Lee and myself, we actually go through and select those videos that are catered more to our industry specifically. So we might see something that's emerging in our industry and we'll select a video or a training module that's more catered towards that. Mm-hmm. So the Inside Man, loved it myself. We work at a really fun company. I enjoy working at Liftoff Commerce. And so it just kind of showed you, it brought transparency to what can happen, but in a very fun way. So It's an excellent point. Another reason why I love Know Before.
So I have a question, because you mentioned this before, and I think you use the word punish, and I think punish is a really harsh, maybe the wrong word. So Setting up the training is one thing, getting all the videos, all the content in the right place, but how do you enforce it? What does enforcement look like?
Yeah. So essentially what we do here is, you set up these training campaigns, and then inevitably you have an employee click on something. What do you do? Well, I already mentioned earlier, you're really making them part of the solution. So one of the things that I like to do when that does happen is I actually go into it. I look at the email because I can see the exact email that this employee might have clicked on, download it, and then go over it with them and say, hey, here are all the red flags that were in this email that you may have missed.
So you can actually see the
100%. I can see the exact email that was sent to them that potentially made them click on that link.
Okay, and that helps you make decisions.
100%.
In terms of
and now we do have some additional remedial training. So not only do I go and I talk to that individual, but then we have some additional remedial training that basically reinforce what we just went over. So all these red flags that we talked about, what you can look at, then we'd have a remedial course that would take them through that. And that just, again, because like I said, more often than not, these employees don't want to be that person. They are going to hear you. When they clicked on something, it's going to make it real for them. Hey, that could have been a ransomware attack.
Yeah.
It wasn't. How do I prevent that moving forward? Because they don't want to be that person.
But you're only as strong as your weakest link in the world of cybersecurity, right?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat, yes. I truly believe that we have to, look at all the employees. I actually look at myself, what I tell my the people on my team, that when you fail, it's a failure for me as your lead, as your manager. And so I really try to train them, get them excited about it. Like you said, Alyssa, let them have fun with it, right? I mean, yeah, if they're not having fun, they're probably just going to breeze through it and not pay attention. And there might be an employee that is just 100%, they don't care. But I don't think that's as much as a cybersecurity issue as it is like that individual probably doesn't need to work for your company because they're probably doing other things. And so it's not just cybersecurity, but like I said at the very beginning, most individuals don't want to be that person. Maybe that one in a million just doesn't care, and they're probably not happy at their job to begin with. It doesn't have anything to do with cybersecurity. It has something to do with something else. Maybe something personal is going on with them. But talk to your employees to find out.
So I guess so the theme that we're repeating, and I keep hearing it over and over again, is that everyone is responsible for cybersecurity, right? So ultimately, everyone is at risk. And ultimately, that means no matter how much awareness, no matter how much training you do, no matter what devices or software that you're using to fortify your IT infrastructure, the best way to say it is it's not if, but when you're attacked, right? And so what do we need to consider? Let's say in the event of an actual breach, what do we do, Caleb?
Man, you got a lot of great questions here today. So
bringing it.
The way that I think about this is, when we were all in grade school, what did we do? We practiced fire drills and we practiced tornado drills and different drills that reinforce what happens when that event if that event unfortunately were to take place. Now, I was fortunate enough that I didn't have a fire at my school and I didn't have a tornado at my school. So I didn't actually have to fully do it. But I still went through the motions, right? I still went through the drills. And so what I would tell organizations out there is practice the drills. Write down a list of the most likely, whatever you might think of, whether it be a DDoS attack, a ransomware attack, write them down on a piece of paper and then write down how likely you think that event would take place in your organization. And then go through the motions. What happens if X event takes place? This is what we need to do. Go through that drill and be prepared. Prepare your employees again. And what we do is, I think we have a whole handful of lists and we rank those. And then every quarter we have a mock drill where we go through a
table.
Yes, exactly. And so I think most recently we did a DDoS attack, which is possibly could happen as us being an e-commerce platform, right? It definitely could happen to us. And so we need to practice what would we do in that scenario? How do we identify it? Who do we notify? What customers do we need to inform? Who's going to handle informing all these customers? Who's going to actually be the hands on the keyboard taking care of the work? And so you can really delegate and go ahead and prepare for that event so that if the day comes, inevitably, unfortunately, something might happen, you're prepared for it and you're not just running around, because that's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is not you having the event by itself. It's having the event and not being prepared for the event. That's worst case scenario.
And not being able to recover from the event too.
Exactly. And that's part of, being prepared, right?
Yeah.
You definitely think about disaster recovery in that effort.
So I've got my own unique story of a breach that I want to share. And this one gets crazy. All right. So buckle up. This was a physical breach.
Ooh.
This is back years ago. I don't know how old you were, but it was probably like 2006, 2007. And I was working at Printegra, and this was at the corporate office where we were at. And one morning, I don't know, it was like 6:30. I get this phone call, and it's from one of my PageFlex guys, this guy named Jerry Brook. And he said, there's chairs everywhere. I'm like, what are you talking about, chairs everywhere? He's like, in the parking lot, there's chairs everywhere. I'm like, I don't understand. He just woke me up, right? Like I'm literally just like trying to clear my eyes, clear the sleep out of my eyes. And he's like, no, you don't understand. There's chairs everywhere. All the computers are gone. And what had happened was somebody had used all the office chairs and gone around to all the computer stations and literally with scissors clipped all of the cabling and everything in the back of those computers, loaded them up into chairs, wheeled them out into the parking lot, and I guess loaded them into a whole bunch of different cars, because there was maybe 50 to 60 office chairs literally just rolling around, blowing around in the wind out there in the parking lot. It was the scariest and at the same time most hilarious thing you'd ever seen. And it comes on the heels of, we were trying to get management, the IT group was trying to get management to invest in cameras and door locks and things of that nature. And the reply at that point was, well, those things are just too expensive. The investment is just too great. And then a few months later, they realized what sort of investment trade-off they had, because we had computers, we had data, we had things that belonged to all these different people, these customers that we had to go and work with the FBI on. We lost a ton of time just having to restore things from backup. Fortunately, we had good backups, but man, imagine if we hadn't had those backups, what that would have done to the organization, because this was at the corporate level. This was all of the data. This was all of our accounting. This was everything. And so the reality is, I go back to, it's not if, but it's when, and it's not always in the manner of an email coming from a prince in Dubai somewhere offering you millions of dollars. Like you said, Caleb, like these attacks can come from anywhere. These are people that are casing your property, your building, they're getting to know how you work, and they're using that information against you. And that's the one thing that this is always in the back of my mind.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point around the fact of what you said with, once the assets were stolen, all those computers, then management realized, oh my goodness, this is going to be so expensive to replace.
Oh yeah.
And the exact same happens with cybersecurity a lot of times, is that everybody just says, oh, we're fine. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen to us. We're just a little small manufacturing company or something like that. Well, in fact, a lot of times they're the ones that they're targeted, because they might not have the budget necessary to hire on all these IT guys and gals and wonderful people that can really secure their environment. Mm-hmm. And so what ends up happening is conversations that I know I've had before, where engineering managers or IT directors, they'll come to the CEOs and they'll say, hey, look, we need to do X, Y, and Z to shore up our environment. Hey, we don't have the money in order to be able to do that right now. But what ends up happening is, unfortunately, they have a ransomware attack, and now they're looking at a $2.5 million ransom, when the IT director last month had just asked for $100,000 way to shore up their environment.
Wow. Yeah.
Hindsight's 2020, but I know that those CEOs are really kicking themselves for not listening to the IT director, and the IT director might, be biting his tongue, not say, I told you so.
Well, and even when it comes to that kind of expense, even something as small as an expense like KnowBe4, that's a small investment, but it can make such an impact.
So true.
Yeah, and so I think that's what people need to do. And I'm starting. You guys hear that? Oh man, we just ran out of time, but it means it's time for
Supply chain chatter.
supply chain chatter. All right. Well, this is where we get to talk about the stuff going on inside the industry today. And wouldn't luck have it, there was actually a breach event that was just discussed at Halo, one of the, what is it, the second largest, Alyssa?
Yes, the second largest organization at PPAI, I think.
Yeah, PPAI. Yeah, that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I would say that a majority of the folks that are in PPAI specifically, they probably connect and communicate with Halo. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, they. I heard the attack affected over 7,000 people.
7,000. Okay. So here's the thing about that, and Caleb, I think I know where your head's already going with this. That 7,000 people, it's not just about Halo anymore. Now it's about all 7,000
right.
people. And then beyond those 7,000, it starts to multiply. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think you need to take those breaches seriously. We mentioned earlier about the website haveibeenpwned.com. It would talk about that. Publicly traded companies are required to report whenever there's a breach that happens, and so you'll actually find information and data there. And so again, Andrew, just like you said, it's kind of like it branches out, right? It starts with 7,000 employees that their data was leaked or their information was stolen, but it can quickly morph into how is this company related to the company that was breached? And so it can quickly spread like a virus, no pun intended there. I mean, but I know we're talking about, cybersecurity and different things like that. But the important thing is that you need to look at those things that happen in your industry, take them seriously. Think about, how are we connected as an organization? How are we protected? What happens if that bleeds over us somehow? How are we protecting ourselves in that way? So I agree with you, Andrew. We need to take this very seriously, and it can't just be about, oh, that happened to that company. It's never going to happen to us.
Well, and the thing is, last year we had also, I think it was at two, Essent, another large supplier of technology in the industry, got hit. And, I know it's so much more than just going through the motions, right? It has to be a lifelong sort of commitment to securing your environment. I remember that was kind of like almost a pledge that we had to look at going into PCI, because it wasn't just about checking some boxes, was it, Caleb? It was about changing your entire attitude, right?
That's exactly right. It was that and a whole lot of coffee.
There's still a lot of coffee involved.
Still a lot of coffee.
I maintain that. But speaking of, my coffee cup is unfortunately woefully empty
I didn't.
over here. We need a podcast intern to make a coffee run for us. You have to hire us a podcast intern, please.
On it.
Yeah, we need something like that. Well, all right. So I think that's all the news we had for the industry under supply chain chatter.
Yes, I believe so.
All right. So I want to go ahead and move on. Caleb brought something incredibly cool for us to take a look at. This is under Memorable Merch. And this is the segment where our guest gets to talk about some really cool stuff that has significantly impacted them in regards to branded merchandise. So, Caleb, what do you got for us today?
Yeah, let me grab it real quick. All right. So I actually brought I mentioned tech conferences. So this is from VMworld.
Nice.
Back in 2019, hopefully it's in frame. But, I have to echo what I heard Roger Buck say on one of your previous shows, Andrew, is that, memorable merch needs to be a premium piece. It can't just be a squish ball or something that, what'd you call it? Some garbage. It was like a play on the word garbage.
Oh, brand fill. Yeah,
Brand fill.
That's Danny Rosin. I'm going to quote Danny Rosin.
I love that. I love that one for sure when I heard it. But, I've had this one since 2019. It is something that I could definitely use. It was catered towards this event, right? I mean, everybody that's coming there has a laptop. So what a great event to give away a laptop back. And I'm carrying around, it says VMworld all the time, and everybody knows that's VMware. And so I am proudly carrying that around. I love the backpack. It's not just a cheap, flimsy one. I mean, it has lots of little bitty additional perks that are inside of here. We actually see right here on the side, there's actually a USB slot, so I can charge my phone if I want to. I can put like an extended battery inside of it. So I actually really, really enjoyed this backpack a lot.
So there's a ton of brand equity, right? I mean, you're wearing that backpack. Every time I see you, we go somewhere, we're going on a trip, you're wearing this VMware backpack. And now they're getting free advertising as you're just walking through Concourse A over here at Hartsfield. Yeah, I think wearable merch or wearable branded merch is an incredibly powerful thing to give away, especially if it's something durable, something long lasting, a jacket, you know, a backpack,
Yeah.
you know, something with some real staying power. Eric on one of our previous shows mentioned that belt buckle from Apple. And this is something that was sold for a very limited time in a very obscure catalog, but yet it still manages to find its way into the mainstream even today.
Yeah.
Right? This premium piece.
Absolutely. And I will say, Andrew, you do a great job with swag too. I love my hoodie. I have tons of swag from Liftoff as well. I didn't want to sit there and say, I didn't want to bring that because I felt like that the audience would be like, oh, that was 100%.
That's just Liftoff.
That was a plan. They gave him that right before the event.
It's totally
But
scripted.
I definitely have that. I do love Liftoff swag as well. And I feel like we do a good job with our swag. So I know that's a large part of the so thank you.
Well, it's a lot of it has to do with our industry and a lot of our wonderful subscribers out there. And this is what they do all day long is they build these merch kits and they help you just kind of help your brand identity just, you know, take off into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
So kudos to our subscribers as well for being such a big part of, whoa, do you hear that? Oh my gosh, it's time for
Cash or Swag.
Cash or Swag. It's our favorite time of the day. Yeah, it's like of the show. Come on, Alyssa, bring that thing out here.
All right.
We've
Well,
got the wheel.
it's very rare that we actually have a guest who is physically here. Should we let Caleb spin the wheel?
We should absolutely here. Let me give it.
We should bring this wheel over to
Should I
Caleb.
spin it? I can spin it.
He can spin the wheel.
Okay.
So you can. This is the first time on this podcast we're letting a guest.
I guess there's actually proof that I'm in the same room as you guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine that a guest.
Or was
spinning
that
the
some
wheel.
type of AI, like algorithm?
Yeah. It's all CGI.
I'm not even gonna look. Y'all tell me what it was.
Here we go. Here we go. It is a swag bundle. All right.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
All right. You're going to enjoy that. I think you probably
Absolutely.
have a couple of others somewhere in a closet somewhere.
Yeah, that's it. I think we're running out on time. But again, Andrew, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure to be here today. Love talking about security. My wife hates when I talk about it to her. So being able to come here and
It's like a vacation.
vent a little bit. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, it's awesome. And I really do so much appreciate. I'm excited about the swag box.
Heck yeah. I'm excited to be able to give it to you. Well, Caleb, I want to thank you so much for being a very outstanding and wonderful guest. To our audience and our viewers, thank you so much for supporting this podcast and listening.
Thank y'all.
And thank you for our sponsors and everybody that made this possible. Have a great show. Until next time.